Staying with us here on TVC Breakfast. Now, Nigeria's economy may be showing early signs of recovery. The National Bureau of Statistics reports that inflation has slowed, dropping to 21.8%, marking a shift after months of rising prices that have weighed heavily on households and businesses alike. But while the numbers suggest a cooling trend, the impact on daily life remains uncertain. Experts caution that sustained reforms are still needed to stabilize the economy, while the government maintains that its policies are beginning to take effect. But for citizens, the test will be whether this reported decline translates into real relief at the checkout counters. Joining us via Zoom from USA is the CEO, Finance with Muktar, Muhammed. Thank you so much for joining us on TVC Breakfast. It's good news for some people who will say that, yes, that's, Nigeria is sustaining gains, when it comes to the inflation rate dropping, and they expect it to trickle down to the common man, which makes some people on X, whatever it is, saying that now statistics will go chop. But do you think this is good news to start with?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a very good news to start with. If you know where we are coming from and where we are now, then definitely it's a very good news to start with. People really need to understand that the economy doesn't just turn around because, again, you look at the inflation peak or you look at what you have on ground. When it comes to economic recovery or economic stability, it doesn't hit the ground running in every area because we didn't just get there overnight. So we won't just get over there overnight. There must be constant policy rejecting, policy statement, both physical and monitoring. So I understand why people are saying, so, oh yeah, inflation is going down, but again, cost of living is high. You have to also understand that when they say the economy is stable, it's not that everything has reached the ordinary man. It means that we cannot see those kind of not external shocks. We cannot see those kind of shocks that we used to have before. Some of those shocks are like exchange rate volatility, high inflationary pressure, and also structural issues. What we have now is an economy that is stable. Exchange rate is relatively stable. Yeah, you will say it's relatively stable at a certain equilibrium between 1,530, 1,540. I mean, it has even stayed at 1,530, between 1,530, 1,535. Both in the parallel and official market. Then you look at also inflation. You can realize that inflation is coming down month to month. But when you look at food inflation, yes, there's still challenges in food inflation. Then you look at the confidence side, on the side of investment. You realize that a lot of investors are trickling into Nigeria. If you look at foreign investment, you look at foreign direct investment, are not yet there yet. Or you look at portfolio investment, you realize that a lot is happening. All you need to do is just to look at the Nigerian Exchange Group and see the kind of funds that are coming out from portfolio investment. When a reform starts, first sector that is even hit by the reforms is the financial sector. Yeah. And that is why the government is seriously looking at the recapitalization of the banks. Then the second sector hit is investors' confidence. That's why a lot of investors that are investing in Nigeria, especially in the equity market, we are seeing the kind of result that we are seeing. Then lastly, you see businesses, because a lot of people say, oh, some of these businesses are declaring profit. Why is it not trickling down to us? Those are what reforms does. After those tiers of reforms, then you begin to see employment. You begin to see improvement in employment. You begin to see cost of living come down. You begin to see cost of borrowing come down. Then you begin to see that trickle down into the ordinary Nigerian. It is what they call in economic terms the lift-lake effect, which sometimes, lag effect, sometimes could take a while.
Okay, sir. I may be pushing us away from the reduction in inflation in Nigeria to something else, but let's see if there's a correlation to both of them. If we have more value put into the Naira and we have exchange rates go as low as 400 Naira per dollar, will it have a direct impact on inflation? Number one. And number two, how will that affect the average Nigerian on the street?
I like your optimism. Exchange rate 400 Naira. I think
But it's possible.
It's possible, isn't it?
Too much to call. But again, let's look at it if it happens, which I will also be very excited if it happens. Nigerian inflationary pressure is largely driven by exchange rate volatility also, and also cost of cost of living in terms of cost of production. Those are what drives inflationary pressure. When you look at exchange rate, is the key driver. I keep saying it that if you want to deal with inflation, we have to deal with exchange rate. And exchange rate is key because over like 70 to 75% of what we consume, we import. If we are not importing what we consume, the machineries that are used to make those products into finished product are being imported. Now, if you see that exchange rate volatility, if you look at the inflationary figure, you realize that the exchange rate has played a role, and then the physical side has played a role. You remember the removal of tariff on staple food like rice, like maize, like that also is reducing the cost of those products. And that's why you are beginning to see stability there. Also, you also have to look at the exchange rate again. At the point we used to have this exchange rate volatility, today is 1,700, tomorrow is 1,600. You realize that if you go back to how we started having this inflationary pressure, outside the rebasing, the next thing that we saw was that because exchange rate was now a bit stable, you saw that inflation started going downward. So definitely exchange rate is key. And now it's key not only because it brings down inflation, it's key because it attracts foreign investors into Nigeria. Exactly. That for me is key. And again, one key driver that we will look at exchange rate, you also look at the current stability we enjoy in the refined petroleum market. Because of that Naira to crude deal between the government and the Dangote refinery, you've seen that most petroleum product has come down. Ordinarily, you'd have seen that the effect of the international price would have been more. So definitely exchange rate is always key. And the only way you can bring stability in the exchange rate is to create a two-way system of liquidity, which you can commend the CBN. They have been able to do that now. Now, what we see, the CBN keep telling you that they want a competitive Naira. Now, a competitive Naira is good for business, that especially if you are a foreign investor or if you are a portfolio investor. But it's not really good for the indigenous companies, the business that derive their product, import products into Nigeria. But it's good for those that will send their product outside the shore of this country. So I think what the CBN is doing now is to create stability first in make the exchange rate more competitive, then create stability, then attract liquidity. Then you will see the exchange rate comes down. But whether it will come to your 400, I don't know. Because even the federal government said that the true value of the Naira, you will always look at it, what is the budget benchmark? And if you look at that budget benchmark as it stands today, it is 1,500. So let's be able to achieve 1,500. Then from there, we begin to see what will happen. I definitely will be excited for an exchange rate of 400 Naira because I know what it's cost, especially when you go out of the shore of this country, like where I am. 2 years ago, when you came here, the exchange rate was very $1 to 400. Today is $1 to 1,500. So $1,000 that used to be $400 is now 1.5 million. So it's really huge.
I know that you certainly enjoy that, but I want to take us a bit to the beginning of the conversation when we started talking. You know, oftentimes this is not the first time we're hearing that, you know, the inflation has dropped. And once again, good morning, Mr. Muhammad. It's always a pleasure to, you know, have you on the show. Good morning. And this is not the first time we're hearing that, you know, inflation has dropped. This is not the first time. We've heard it over and over again. But the question is, a lot of Nigerians, I'm coming from the human angle, a lot of Nigerians are tired of hearing this because you hear it has dropped, but it doesn't affect, you know, in the stuffs. The market woman, you're telling her inflation has dropped. She's still buying the things at that amount. The Okada rider, you're telling him inflation has dropped. People are still paying, you know, they're still charging people high. So my question is, at what point do we say inflation has dropped and then we get to see it in our daily lives like going to buy foodstuffs in the market, our daily lives like paying transportation? Because I tell you, a lot of people are tired and a lot of people are not economists as well. So it takes time for you to explain it for them to understand. When you say inflation has dropped, they're like, what are you saying? I'm still buying things at these prices. So at what point do we get to the fact that it will reflect say we dey see am say inflation has actually dropped.
Okay, thank you. But I thank God that you're the one asking that question, and you're a lady also. You totally agree with me that the cost of tomatoes, as it was last year, is not the same cost it is this year.
But it's very little. But the difference is little.
Yes, that's what I say, that you don't expect a quick result because you didn't get here overnight. You need to look at, like we've talked about the exchange rate. We also talked about the removal of fuel subsidy. You also have to look at that. Even now, fuel, at the time we're seeing this volatility, the fuel price was about 200 naira, and we could not sustain it. Then we moved it to about 1,000, 1,200. Today we are seeing fuel price relatively steady at between 800 to 900, which is good. That means you have seen the reduction. Now, in terms of seeing that in the market, it will take a little bit of effort and time. Let me give you an example of food inflation, which is what drive a lot of people to ask the question, cost of living is still high. Current data of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, year-to-year basis, food inflation is still high.
Yeah.
But month-to-month basis, it seems to be declining. But when you look at it, food inflation challenges are much. Sometimes you look at food security, insecurity there. It's not helping matters. You look at the planting season also. You look at natural disaster. So you look at a lot of things are coming into play when it comes to that. So definitely in terms of food inflation, we have not seen the kind of reduction that we expect, but we cannot say we are not seeing reduction. Like I said, when you come up with a reform, the first thing that the reform does, it causes a lot of chaos. Later you see stability. Then at the third process of a reform, you begin to see the gain of those reforms in various areas. Now, food security is also a challenge because, again, you look at the cost of borrowing. The cost of borrowing is still high because CBN is still taking interest rate. Hiking interest rate. To borrow today as a local business, you are borrowing at about 30%. So definitely we have an effect. Now, when you talk about this issue of transportation, we have not seen the kind of reduction we want to see in transportation. I totally agree with you. I don't blame it so much on the government because, again, if you look at it structurally, if you look at the Road Transport Union, you look at local transportation, they will tell you that, okay, cost of petroleum products has come down, fuel has come down, but the cost of spare parts have not come down because the exchange rate is still high. It's not what it used to be last year. So there's a lot of factors. If you are not producing tomatoes, you say, yes, the cost of exchange rate in bringing those machinery is up, and also the cost of production has gone up. I saw you complaining about power. Power is a major challenge, so it has an effect in the cost of production. Yeah. So you will not see those kind big difference that you hope to see in the short term. But in the long term, if government policy is consistent and does not suffer any external forces, definitely we will be celebrating. But to say food price will come down to what it was 2 years ago, just like your colleague said, they wanted an exchange rate fund, it's going to be a high mirage. But to say one stability in terms of food price, I think for now we are there. We need to begin to look at reduction. And reduction involves a lot of processes.
Indeed. And thank you thus far for some of the clarifications you've brought. I hope Nigerians who are watching are getting more informed about the real deal about this.
And that's if they won't think I'm
Well, sometimes you can't help that. But speaking of transportation, food, and so on and forth, from what we see here from the NBS, listing out the contributors, they said food, non-alcoholic beverages, restaurants, and accommodation services, transport were top contributors to the CPI. Speak to us as to how this element contributed to that.
I don't think, if you're in Lagos, you know that cost of accommodation has gone up. So whether the house is new, whether the house is old, the landlord says, look, building material prices are not the same again. So then we go back to that exchange rate. Now you look at the cost of cement last year, 2 years ago, it's different. When you look at transportation, I've already touched on it. Even if you see stability in terms of petroleum price, you have not seen that trickle down to cost of transportation. But for you, I think it has reduced your own expenditure, because if you own a car, and I know you own one, you have also reduced your cost of your cost that you paid in filling up your tank. So the removal of subsidy, initially we thought it's going to have a snowball effect on every Nigerian. But for now, I think the rich are enjoying it, because the cost of filling your fuel 2 years ago has reduced compared to the cost of filling your fuel now. In terms of food inflation, which I've touched on, I have told you that has to do with planting seasons and other natural disasters, then insecurity. And that is going to take time. You see, before now, we used to have tomatoes from the north. Then tomatoes coming from the north is not coming again like it used to come. Yam from Benue State, because of the insecurity. It's not helping matter. And also you look at transportation of this product from the north to a place like Lagos, the levies that are being charged virtually from every state they pass by. So that's why people like us are excited of the new tax regime that will come into law. Hopefully, it will stop those levies. So that also will bring down.
Let me quickly put this in now.
So that's my.
Let me quickly put this in now. You know, you've mentioned this quite, elegantly, but give us some statistics, or might I say projection, as an economist now. You said would feel the pain for a while, but how long then do you think would begin to truly enjoy this thing? Give us a projection. 2 years, 10 years,
no,
5 days?
Not 10 years.
You see, economy is just like the life of a man. You have your plan, then again, your plan can suffer, and then but you keep going. I think from where I'm sitting now, in 2 years, we've seen a little bit of policy, not policy somersault that we used to see. We've seen government stick to what they are planning and what they're about to do. So if I sit here and look at that, I will tell you that in the next 2 years, we will begin to see the effects, true effects of some of this government policy. Now, 1 year time, I expect a little indices to begin to happen. One, exchange rate will stabilize, like what we are seeing, maybe lower, and maybe up to 400 naira, like your colleague hopefully is wishing for. I'm also in that like wishes. Then secondly, we'll see job, because companies will stabilize, they will expand. Then we will now begin to see the livelihood of the average Nigerians improve. From there, we'll now begin to see cost of food. At that time, hopefully, we have dealt with the insecurity, and government is putting a lot of emphasis on agriculture, looking at special banks for agriculture, for farmers to get single loan, a loan at a single digit. All this in the next 1 year, I expect a lot from this government, and I expect them to stabilize the economy. Then after the stability, you will begin to see cost of. I know everybody is saying the economic is growing, but I'm still suffering. But what I want to say is that the economic growth and economic stability is different from bringing down the cost of living. Growth can be happening, the economy can be stable, but the hardship could still be there. It's like when you are in a ship, there could be a high storm, and the storm will reduce. It will also take time before the ship will get to the shore to park. So there will still be that wind left, center, and right. I think that's my take on that.
Absolutely. So, but if you look at, we are celebrating the fact that there's this consecutive decline of the what's it called, the inflation rate. But if you look at the interest rate, it's still very much high, as 27.5%. So, and that's quite tough on SMEs. Imagine someone in Ibadan who can't borrow to grow because, yes, I can't afford it. That is on one side. What do you think the government can do on one side? The other side is the fact that, yes, you are in South Carolina, in the United States, and then there is a whole lot of things there. I don't know how much, whether they spend coins in the US, but I know in the UK, they still spend coins. But here in Nigeria, we do not spend coin. And the highest of amount of money that we have, the highest denomination is 1,000 naira. So I've been asking myself, why do we need 1,000 naira? And then we have developed economies where they spend coins. And the highest you will see moving around is 20 pounds. So what exactly is our problem? Why do we have to be spending 1,000 naira notes and then we keep talking about inflation, etc.?
I think when it comes to that, I think it's a mindset. I mean, it's an issue that has to deal with Nigeria. If you go to the market, sometimes the prices of goods, You will never see that coins there, like you rightly pointed out, because even when you go to the market, you go with 500 naira to buy something, they'll tell you that we don't have change. So that also was killing those coins thing, and again, because you have to see change. But when in a developed economy, you see they are mostly cashless, so those coins can come to play. If you see the bank, sometimes you see their return, there's always that coins there, 20 kobo, 30 kobo. It's because most of those economies are cashless. But if you want to buy things, it's very difficult. Look, I'm not holding forth for the government. Everybody knows me. I say true to power. But the current global economic reality is hitting even the United States of America, I can tell you, because I'm here. Because the cost of housing is also high in terms of rent payment in the United States. The cost of some household goods is also on the high side here. But again, they have structures that will help the citizen to meditate against these high costs. That's the difference between them and Nigeria. But definitely, economics policies has helped them, and also, but economic reality, the cost of virtually everything has gone up, because Nigeria cannot be immune from the global challenge that the economy is suffering. So I'm not holding forth for the government. That's what is happening. But like I said, they have structures that will help their citizens to militate against this high. Then secondly, you talk about the interest rate. Look, the CBN is looking at, if you look at the CBN body language, they are looking at, can we stabilize, can we deal with inflation and stabilize exchange rate? When we deal with inflation, we stabilize exchange rate, then we'll begin to think of bringing down interest rate. Their main challenge as it stands now is to stabilize the economy. So in stabilizing the economy, they need to also guide against excess liquidity. And in guiding against excess liquidity, they have to hike interest rate. I, for one, am not a supporter of high interest rate, especially with the kind of downward inflation that we have seen thus far, even if you say it comes from rebasing. I'm not a supporter of that. Why am I not a supporter? Because again, that means cost of business, cost of borrowing has gone high. And again, if you reduce the liquidity in the system, the most vibrant sector in the Nigerian economy is the informal sector. It's largely driven by liquidity. So now that we are seeing inflation coming down, what we expect from the CBN, we are expecting that rate cut will happen. But like I said, the CBN is looking at stability. When rate cut happens, that means the kind of return foreign investor gets in fixed income market will definitely not be what they really are, because they are more confident in the fixed income market because of the safety net of it. So, but if you cut those rates, where we enjoy those benefits is the equity market. And so you might see some of investors, but again, going to the equity market, but again, they will look at the volatility. So the CBN is trying to manage it. It's looking at bringing down interest rate, creating stability, dealing with inflation to stable exchange rate. That is what they are looking at now, and that's why interest rate is still high. As long as interest rate is high, the cost of borrowing will definitely remain high.
Will remain the same. Okay, yeah, we are talking the economy, and we are talking about inflation rates going down, and I think I made your day when I said we should
400.
Yeah, well, I imagined Naira going down to 400 per dollar. However, as an economist, and understanding Nigeria and the state at which the Nigerian economy is right now, what would be your advice to the government to maintain this pace of bringing down inflation? You know, what would be your candid professional advice to the government, you know, to maintain this pace of bringing down the inflation to a point where the gentleman on the street will feel it?
Thank you. I think one, again, what the government should do, should look at our monetary policy. I've talked about it. That is with the CBN. They should look at synergy between the physical and monitoring side. We should continue to, the CBN should continue to drive stability in the exchange rate so that we'll continue to see inflation goes down. Then I thought we need to look at structural reform. That is what will have an impact on the average man. And we need to look at structural reform in terms of cost of production of some of these goods. How can government help in reducing the cost of production? And one of those areas in the area of infrastructural development. And like we say, infrastructure does not take overnight. but it could happen. We have seen miracles in the Argentina miracle and others. So we could also key into that and begin to see how we can begin to see the average man on the street. I think the key thing is structural reforms. I heard you people on the studio talking about corruption. It's still a major problem in the Nigerian system. Then cost of governance, also prudency, physical discipline in terms of managing resources. And that brings me, because again, you cannot talk politics and then you cannot talk economy and not talk policy and politics. You look at the reality on ground. The reality on ground is that the 3 tiers of government have earned so much since President Tinubu came to power because of the removal of subsidy. But if you look at what has happened, reality of the life of the average Nigerian has not improved, despite revenue from these 3 tiers of government have improved. You see that everybody just focus on the center. The center can match some, can tell you we have been able to do this, we have been able to do this. Where our state government, where our local government, in terms of local government autonomy, what are they doing? There must be synergy. It mustn't just look in Lagos sometimes, even in my own street, the road is not good and people are saying the federal government, the federal government, the federal government. Some people say the state government. They've forgotten that it's the local government work. Education is largely supposed to be for the local government. Why our schools not have been, why our teachers not being paid well. These people have, there's been an improvement. So I think we need to hold our elected officials accountable before we begin to see results, because they have no excuse now. Where they will definitely come up with the excuse and tell you that the exchange rate, if you look at what the exchange rate was when we're receiving this, is different. But we are not talking about it. We are talking about you are receiving it in Naira. What have you been able to do? You have moved from almost 100 million to about 500 million. That is huge. So how much are the people feeling the impact? For me, I think physical discipline is very key.
Yeah.
Right,
all right, okay.
Very quickly.
All right, I just want to say this because you have said a lot of things that need to be done, you know, for us to see the layman on the street feel that inflation has dropped. But I put it to you that you also said in 2 years, and I hold you for your word, you said in 2 years. Do you think that we'll be able to do all of this in 2 years?
I think you should be a lawyer, because as you put it to me, I cannot even put it to him. I cannot even doubt it. Hopefully, like I said, every indices, we need to get it right. And if we do that, definitely inflation will definitely come down, and we'll see cost of living will come down. When I talked about that, we also have to know that we have to diversify our economy. It's key, because again, oil price is not in our hand. That's our highest earning in terms of FX. So we need to begin to look at how can we diversify into other sector, so that when there is a major shock in the oil price, like what we are encountering now, remember the budget bank benchmark is about $70. The oil price is doing about $60, $63, $65. So we are not seeing, we have a shortfall of $5. Right. So that's why you see the government keep going to borrow and borrow and borrow. Even if the non-oil sectors have improved in terms of value they bring to the economy, in dollars terms has not improved. The oil sector is still the key driver. So we need to diversify economy. I say, like I said, I'll come back 2 years, years from now again, God willing, and we'll be seeing something different. But like I told you, it also depends on what happened externally. We have no control over that.
I think that's a convenient place for us to leave it. The clock is ticking. I know Ria will definitely stick to that time. So when it's in 2 years' time, she will be asking you how far we've gone. But all the same, it's quite an insightful conversation we've had with you so far. From South Carolina, the CEO, Finance with Muktar Muhammed from the United States. Thank you so much for your keenness of insight on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.